on this edition of Great Lakes Now. 50 years ago, Cleveland's Cuyahoga River famously caught fire. But 5 decades of cleanup has brought it back from the brink. The ongoing battle to keep Asian carp out of the Great Lakes.
Whenever any of these carps are out of balance, they're going to have catastrophic ecological effects.
And hydroponic farming, but for food. Really?
We are not growing weed, we are growing herbs, but not herb.
Great Lakes Now is brought to you by the Fred A. and Barbara M. Erb Family Foundation, Lori and Tim Wadhams, the Richard C. Devereaux Foundation for Energy and Environmental Programs at Detroit Public Television, the Polk Family Fund, Eve and Jerry Young, the Americana Foundation, the Brookby Foundation, and
the Consumers Energy Foundation is committed to serving Michigan, from preserving our state's natural resources and sustaining our future, to continuing business growth, academic achievement, and community involvement. Learn more at consumersenergy.com/foundation.
and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ward Detweiler. June 22nd marked 50 years since the infamous Cuyahoga River fire. From Cleveland, Rick Jackson of PBS affiliate WVIZ reports on half a century of improvements some say were inspired by a single image.
Let's start with that infamous photo. Time magazine publishing this image of a tugboat fighting flames. But this is not the June 22, 1969 fire it's said to depict, which was so small and extinguished so quickly that there are no pictures. Truth be told, fires were common on rivers across the industrial heartland. Through the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, numerous rivers in Cleveland, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Detroit were seen as little more than sewers. The photo, perhaps the image responsible for creation of today's Environmental Protection Agency, is from 17 years earlier, of a blaze that did require fireboats on the Cuyahoga and cost $300,000 in damages, $2.9 million in 2019 currency. After that mistakenly named photo was published, the fire that wasn't seen is now known as the last river fire in America. But this American river, now designated as scenic, was always a tale of two ecosystems. One of them began as the glaciers receded, some 11,000 years ago. The era left us somewhat acidic waters when the glacier receded. Blocked by ice, north-flowing rivers turned south to escape, creating the meandering routes that permeate northeast Ohio, especially the source water of what indigenous peoples would later dub the Crooked River. We went to talk to the expert on these lands, the Geauga Park District's Dan Best.
Where we are right now, Lake Aquila, is an example of a lake that was formed here by these glacial outwash deposits, these sandstone hills. A lot of water moves through that Sharon conglomerate sandstone. It's very permeable and works its way into the valleys off the uplands, and that's what really is feeding the river. And we have some of these wetlands mixed in here too, that they're all part of that drainage system too.
Ecologically, how important is this?
Whatever happens up here impacts things downstream. Fortunately, our watersheds are fairly well protected up here by a variety of public lands and other preserved lands.
Keep coming, keep coming. Oh, they're coming right to us.
Here we are. We just show up, and they just turned up here. People wait years for this opportunity.
Oh, yeah, he went down. There was a time we couldn't have come out here and seen eagles. What does it say about the health of the river that we can support that kind of wildlife?
Bottom line, improve water quality.
But in the mid to late 20th century, the water downstream from these idyllic spots wasn't in condition for much of anything. Archival footage shows lines of factories along the banks of the river, and a 1967 documentary categorized the situation thusly.
The Cuyahoga River, as it reaches Lake Erie after a 100-mile twisting and turning journey from its headwaters, is an exhausted stream, abused and misused by man and his machines.
Purposeful polluting of the Crooked River is traceable back to the Civil War. By the early 20th century, there were upwards of 20 oil refineries in Greater Cleveland. With little regard for the outcome, a common practice for refiners was to just eject unusable portions of refined crude oil straight into the water outside the plants, which they increasingly used as a growing industrial dumping ground. Reports of the time indicate hundreds of thousands of barrels of thick crude floating down creeks to the river. Combined, it left the water and banks along the narrow channel saturated with gasoline. Not only refineries, but steelmakers, chemical firms, paint companies, and shippers were all dumping waste. Sludge could literally be scooped from the waterway by hand. In 1967, Carl Stokes was elected the first black mayor of a major American city and inherited a river pollution problem at its height. But Cleveland had many other issues to deal with, and ecology wasn't high on the docket. Yet Mayor Stokes, not previously recognized as an ecologist, fought hard to protect and rejuvenate the water.
We have the kind of air and water pollution problems in these cities that are every bit as dangerous to the health and safety of our citizens as any intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Today, efforts to clean the Cuyahoga start upstream, long before the industrially used portion of the river. Just before it enters the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, north of Akron, Ohio, is this water reclamation plant, where sewage and residue from 300,000 plus customers and the overflow from overtaxed storm drains combines. Were it not for the cleansing here, all that waste would flow unchecked into the river. Tom Sanderson oversees the 75 acres facility.
This is the flow for our entire collection system comes in here. Believe it or not, the water that we put into the river is usually cleaner than the river water.
You feel like people take you for granted?
I don't know if people take us for granted, but I think a lot of people just don't know what it is that we do and what it takes. What it takes to treat what you flush down the toilet or put down your shower or comes out of your washing machine.
But the larger issue was never about toilets. Following coverage of the Cuyahoga River fire, signing of the Clean Water Act was expedited. The Federal Environmental Protection Agency was created just after the first Earth Day in 1970 at the behest of President Richard Nixon. Then, in 1972, the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement committed the United States and Canada to restoring and protecting the Great Lakes. The battle to clean water was underway. 47 years of effort later, the river is a living and life-sustaining element of city life. The Ohio Environmental Protection Agency continually monitors municipal and industrial discharges, urban runoff, and unintended organic enrichment, protecting aquatic life. Since the fire, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District has invested roughly $3.5 billion toward purification and development of new sewer systems. Recreation from paddleboarding to rowing, Cleveland now ranking among the top 10 American rowing hubs, to family boating is commonplace. Many species of fish are found in the river, and an increasing number of immigrants arriving from Burma catch and eat them regularly, as they did in their home country. The U.S. EPA last year reduced its restrictions on consuming Cuyahoga River caught fish. Now, more than a dozen breweries in Akron and Cleveland use water sourced from the river to create craft beers. Jesse Doler is the head brewer at R. Shea Brewing, which takes pride in using the Cuyahoga's water.
When you think about the Cuyahoga, the quality of the water, what does it do to or for the beer that makes it special here that we wouldn't get in Toledo or Cincinnati?
The water that we get at the Merriman Valley location is fantastic for multi-year beers. We don't really have to do anything to the water chemistry at all because it already sits very well for the maltier styles of beer. Other locations, they have to play with the water chemistry, adding more minerals or salts to balance out of what you want to create, but we're very lucky here. We don't have to add much to it to make a good beer.
So as people hoist a glass to honor the Cuyahoga, the annual festivities surrounding the anniversary of an infamous fire attended by an estimated 7,000 people in recent years remind many of the efforts and the accomplishments of saving a natural resource, which still spurs civic and environmental improvement. In Cleveland, I'm Rick Jackson.
We have more on the Cuyahoga River cleanup at greatlakesnow.org. You probably know that Asian carp are a threat to the Great Lakes. But there's more to the story than those jumping fish in Illinois. For the latest, we take you to northern Ohio.
The Ohio DNR is going out on a fishing trip on the Sandusky River in Fremont, Ohio, about 25 miles southeast of Toledo. They're training to fish for Asian carp. Yes, they're looking for Asian carp 30 miles from Lake Erie. Chances are, when you think of Asian carp, you picture this. Fish leaping out of rivers as motorboats pass by. But only one species of Asian carp jumps like that, and there are 4 species that threaten the Great Lakes. grass carp, silver carp, bighead carp, and black carp. Great Lakes Now contributor Andrew Reeves is also the author of Overrun: Dispatches from the Asian Carp Crisis. He explains how the grass carp was originally brought to Arkansas to help fish farmers with the problem of aquatic weeds.
Grass carp, true to their word, proved to be really good at cleaning aquatic weeds. But the problem that we encountered really was we know that they managed to escape in a number of different ways.
Like grass carp, silver and bighead carp were brought in to clean up waterways.
It was later on with the introduction of silver and bighead carp that eat like phyto and zooplankton, filter feeders that sort of swim through the water column. They're the ones that we tried to find a use for in catfish ponds, cleaning algae, and then later cleaning sewage lagoons.
Finally, there are black carp, which have molar-like teeth in their throats for crushing mollusk shells.
Black carp eat native freshwater mussels and clams especially. The big black carp will actually just swallow them shells and all and let their stomach acid basically take what they need.
Black carp have been found in low numbers in several states, especially along the Mississippi River. They could become a bigger threat in the future. All 4 of these fish species can grow large, up to 100 pounds, and they can eat anywhere from 20 to 120% of their body weight a day. If they get into the Great Lakes, they could devastate the native fish population.
We've got fish like lake trout and walleye and yellow perch that form the backbone of a $7 billion sport fishery. These fish are the kind that can get pushed out.
Right now, we're fighting the Asian carp on 2 main fronts, one in Ohio and one in Illinois. Remember those jumping carp? They've been found in the Mississippi River and its tributaries since the 1980s. Some of those tributaries in Illinois connect to the Great Lakes through shipping canals, and Asian carp could follow those canals into Lake Michigan and beyond. Since 2002, the only things standing in their way have been 3 electric barriers in Romeoville, Illinois, 37 miles from Lake Michigan. They're operated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
It would be very difficult for any fish to swim directly through the electrical fields when they are on and operating.
Chuck Shea is a project manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
As the fish comes into the electrical field, it gets a stronger and stronger electrical shock, and most fish will turn around.
We do know that those barriers have done a pretty effective job at keeping them contained, but we also know that they're not perfect.
I don't know that we can say anything in life is absolutely 100% effective.
In fact, 2 Asian carp have been found on the other side of the barriers. A bighead carp was caught in Lake Calumet in 2010, and in 2017, a silver carp was caught in Little Calumet River, just 9 miles from Lake Michigan. The Corps has proposed an additional barrier system 10 miles away at the Brandon Road Lock and Dam, near the front lines of the carp population. It would cost over $750 million. Former Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner balked at both the cost to taxpayers and the impact on shipping. But current Governor J.B. Pritzker approved engineering and design work in April, although he's concerned about costs too. The Corps of Engineers estimates the project would take until 2028 to complete. But Illinois hasn't been ignoring the carp. The state's Department of Natural Resources is well aware of the threat they pose.
Whenever any of these carps are out of balance, there's too many of them, they're going to have catastrophic ecological effects.
Instead of building barriers, Illinois has been fighting the Asian carp the old-fashioned way, by catching them. Since 2012, the Illinois DNR has paid commercial fishermen to catch thousands of silver and bighead carp in rivers that connect to the Great Lakes.
All Asian carp all the time is our little mantra. We use multiple gears, that is nets, to move fish through funnels into areas where we can capture them all at once. This is a big operation. We use multiple federal and state agencies working together with contracted commercial fishermen.
The hope is that reducing the carp population here will keep them from moving toward the lakes. And it's been working. The Illinois DNR estimates that Asian carp populations closer to Lake Michigan have dropped by 96% since they began tracking numbers in 2012.
For the past 5 years, they've removed 7 million pounds of Asian carp, which is a huge amount of fish. And we know that it is actually easing the pressure on the barriers in Chicago, so it's doing its job effectively. But those kinds of solutions, as effective as they're going to be, are only a part of it.
300 miles east on the Sandusky River, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources is mainly concerned with grass carp.
Unfortunately, through some method, grass carp have gotten out into the Sandusky River, the Maumee River, and Lake Erie. There are concerns over their impact on the ecosystem through consuming vegetation that's important for other species.
Ohio allows the use of sterile grass carp to control aquatic vegetation. Since the fish can't reproduce, there was no cause for concern until a troubling discovery in 2012.
When a commercial fisherman in the Sandusky River caught about a dozen very small, young grass carp. We had those tested and they came back as diploid fish, which means they could reproduce.
Grass carp aren't nearly as abundant as the silver and bighead carp in Illinois, and the Ohio DNR is trying to keep it that way.
I'm going to turn around and go with the current.
This year, they'll operate an electro-fishing boat all season long.
So an electrofishing boat has a generator on board and a control box. So it pumps electricity in the water. When a fish swims into that field, they just basically get stunned. The guys in the front of the boat can then net the fish and put them in the holding tank. Really within a few moments of getting out of the electric current and into the holding tank, the fish are typically A-OK. It does not kill anything.
Since 2012, the DNR and commercial fishermen have caught about 200 grass carp. And there's a reason they're focused here in Fremont.
This is kind of ground zero on the Sandusky River. It's high flow, fast current, it's turbulent. This is where they like to spawn on the Sandusky.
While eliminating Asian carp is not off the table, experts like Andrew Reeves temper expectations.
I think is a reasonable thing that we can hope for Asian carp, that they will become a part of the ecosystem rather than what we've seen in the Illinois or the Mississippi where they are 70, 80, 90% of the biomass.
It's not something that's just going to go away. Of the fish that we've collected since 2012, about 75% have been diploid or capable of reproducing. So that's concerning to us, which is why we're ramping up efforts for grass carp removal and control.
Meanwhile, concern for the Great Lakes grows. On June 6th, the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, a collection of mayors and elected officials from over 130 cities in the region, issued a declaration demanding action to stop Asian carp. No more studies or delays.
With the Congress looking at appropriating, the governor now coming on as a sponsor, we don't need to continue studies. We need to get this project done.
Their declaration requests that the U.S. government and the Army Corps of Engineers complete the barriers at the Brandon Road Lock and Dam by 2022, 6 years earlier than the Corps of Engineers' estimated date of completion.
For the latest on the fight against invasive species and how you can identify the 4 species of Asian carp, visit greatlakesnow.org. The Great Lakes Basin is farming territory, but our climate doesn't permit year-round growing, at least not outside. Indoors, it's a different matter.
In cities like Detroit, there's been talk of repurposing vacant industrial buildings to grow food for years. Now it's happening. We're at the Planted Farm that started up recently on the city's east side.
We have Planted, growing in a 20,000 square foot warehouse, growing produce every single week to local restaurants.
This is vertical hydroponic farming, one of at least 2 operations in the Motor City. And farms like this are growing around the Great Lakes, in places like Chicago, Toronto, and Cleveland.
These types of buildings, old warehouses in most cases, with some remodeling and redoing, they're perfect for growing this type of produce. And that type of produce can be grown indoors, hydroponically, vertically, and at a great conservancy of water. We use over 90% less water to grow plants over their life cycle than if we grow them in the ground.
The seed right now that I'm watering is some Genevieve basil.
Within the city of Detroit, there's a lot of viable space, so we're essentially taking what used to be manufacturing for the auto industry and we're turning that into manufacturing of food.
I relate it very much to the same time when Henry Ford was bringing the first Fords off the assembly line. We're sort of at that point, that juncture in the hydroponic industry, in the way that we're innovating and birthing the industry here in the United States.
But this business aims to be far cleaner than the heavy industry of Detroit's heyday.
When I came into this farm and saw how we were growing and how there's really only nutrients added to the water, no pesticide, no herbicide, that I understood that it is actually quite sustainable and is a good additive to the food system to supplement those other local growers that are growing that natural way in soil.
Vertical farms come with another environmental advantage. The water stays in a closed system, meaning no nitrate runoffs into rivers and lakes.
And that's the Oregon peas, dwarf gray peas, and then the black oil sunflower seeds.
Of course, growing indoors means no sunlight, but here, Planted has gotten a boost from the cannabis industry.
Starting my business pitch talking about hydroponic systems, I would have to qualify it and say that we are not growing weed, we are growing herbs, but not herb. We're growing vegetables and produce. And I know that from our standpoint, our lighting company was able to really grow its business from the cannabis industry, but that came back to help us launch our business growing produce because they had the money to develop these amazing lights that we now use to grow food to nourish the world. So how about that?
The glow of these lights doesn't look like sunlight, but from the plant's perspective, it's actually better.
The people that have developed these lights have figured out plants grow more effectively under specific wavelengths of light. So it's actually a combination of red and blue wavelengths that they grow under. So that actually gets us a pretty consistent reduction in growth time compared to full spectrum light out in the field.
Powering these lights and heating and cooling the building mean high electric bills traditional farms don't have. Still, they're reducing their carbon footprint by delivering their products locally, unlike many traditional growers that ship from distant states or even other continents.
We are selling herbs, baby greens, and microgreens to our local chefs that are interested in bringing some really flavorful, interesting products to the plate. Brujo pea shoots ×4.
This is green shiso. It's a small microgreen. We also grow these leaves to full size. It's kind of across the flavor between something like basil, and it also has a very floral flavor. It's really fragrant, and it's used in a lot of mixed drinks, and also as a garnish.
Specialty crops like shiso can command good prices. That's part of Planted's business plan. Grow products like this year-round and avoid competing with other local farmers.
A lot of chefs just saying, hey, we're looking for this type of product, this category. We can't get it from other local growers, or we can in the summer, but then in the winter we have a gap in local supply. And then bringing that information back to the farm so that we could start to grow exactly the produce that those chefs want to buy.
So this is going to Maru downtown. And then we also sell this in an herb size, so the full size leaf. So same plant, we just let it grow a little bit longer.
Right. And now we just hope we don't get a big gust of wind.
The Planted crew delivers an order of microgreens to Maru, a sushi restaurant in downtown Detroit.
We got, Thank you.
A whole bunch of baby greens coming in.
We do.
Microgreens are not a salad. They're not something you just put on the plate to make it look nice. No, you use a microgreen to actually enhance the flavor of something. For us here at the sushi bar, we want our salmon to taste, hey, if you want to give a minty taste to my salmon, let me add a shiso, a little micro shiso. It'll pop, it'll make it pop. If you want something more on the spicier side, we will add a radish sprout. You know what I'm saying? So that would change the flavor of the salmon.
Beyond the chefs and their restaurants, Planted gets their produce directly to the public at Detroit's Eastern Market.
We started selling at Eastern Market. We're going to be about 50-50 in terms of sales, which is very exciting to see a lot of traction for these, what I always say, weird things that we're growing here. They're not the typical iceberg lettuces of the world. We're growing really interesting varietals, and Michiganders that are coming to the market are so stoked to have that in their refrigerator.
We love Eastern Market. We had the opportunity to start selling here in the winter months when they actually need more vendors like us to provide fresh greens in a time when most gardeners aren't growing them. We do a lot of explaining about hydroponic growing, how we grow produce. Some people come with the knowledge that we're here in the city and they just want to taste our produce and talk farming with us, which we love to do. Other people come and taste the products and ask us how we're growing it because the products do have a very distinctive taste and look, a real consistent color.
For vertical farmers, the margins are still tight. Some vertical operations have come and gone in cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul. But recently, investors including Amazon's Jeff Bezos have injected tens of millions of new dollars into the industry, funding growers on the East and West Coasts. So right now, this market is looking up.
It's a very interesting combination between technology and farming. It's a very different way of growing food, but one of the things that we all notice here is that it still has that life-giving effect on you to be in our grow room with literally thousands of plants growing at the same time, growing all around you. There's something that's very affirming and very joyful and life-giving to know that we're creating food people are going to eat and enjoy and be nourished by.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. For more on these stories and the Great Lakes in general, visit greatlakesnow.org. When you get there, you can follow us on social media or subscribe to our newsletter to get updates about our work. See you out on the lakes.
Great Lakes Now is brought to you by the Fred A. and Barbara M. Erb Family Foundation, Lori and Tim Wadhams, the Richard C. Devereaux Foundation for Energy and Environmental Programs at Detroit Public Television, the Polk Family Fund, Eve and Jerry Young, the Americana Foundation, the Brookby Foundation, and
the Consumers Energy Foundation is committed to serving Michigan, from preserving our state's natural resources and sustaining our future, to continuing business growth, academic achievement, and community involvement. Learn more at consumersenergy.com/foundation.
And viewers like you. Thank you.